United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please silence your electronic devices. Unless needed for the meeting. Motion to move the agenda to the table. Made by Jen, seconded by Adriana. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you so much. Dr. Evans, any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
There are none at this time, Mr. Crowley.
Thank you very much. Motion to adopt the agenda as is, made by Helen, seconded by Wendy. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you so much. Approval of minutes, August 4th, 2022. Motion to accept the minutes made by Mr. Groden, seconded by Helen Jersey. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. We have no presentations this evening, which brings us to Adriana, and I think why a lot of people are here.
I'd like to motion to adopt the consent agenda F1 through M2.
Do I have a second? By Helen Jersey. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And congratulations to those that are in the room. That brings us all the way down to board roundtable. I can't remember where I started last time. So Adriana,
Okay.
anything to report out?
Yeah, so I attended the Leadership in Education Conference, it's 12th and 13th with Mr. Groden, Ms. Rousseau, Ms. Riley, and Dr. Evans. It was a really great conference. A lot of different things were discussed. I think the best part was the keynote, who's the current superintendent at Manoa East Syracuse School District. She's amazing. Wow, Dr. Gladys. And she just spoke a lot about the different initiatives and things that were happening there. As well, there was a lot about mental health, and we had some people from the state education department there, which was a really good opportunity to hear from some of them about their concerns, as well as the exciting things we see happening for New York education.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Wendy?
I have nothing to report.
Very well. Mr. Groden.
I can corroborate that I was there. So I was there, just these, and it was a very, very good leadership conference. Having gone to the law conferences and then this, there was talk about the teacher shortage, there was talk about the mental health of the students, there was talk about how we're dealing with moving forward for the last 2 years and what comes next and how we as school boards can address that. And it was extremely packaged well. We had the speakers, we had the panel, it was well worth it. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Mrs. Russo.
I went as well, and for what they said. And I also have observed the varsity sports, all to a great start this week. I saw cross country, soccer, football. Very excited. Thanks, report.
Okay, nice. Mrs. Riley.
Okay, I also went to the New York State School Boards Association Leadership Conference on the 12th and 13th, and it was part of essentials and being on the school board, part of the requirements to be a school board member. I thought that they were very knowledgeable. They went very fast. You had to take some notes real quick, but they were, it was impressive how much they were able to inform us in the 3 sessions that were about 3 hours each. So it was very enlightening. Other than that, on that Saturday, so that was on the 13th, on that Saturday, I was able to see the tail end of this 7x7 football event that was here against Fallsburg and Menacing
Or Jervis.
for Jervis. And I wish I could see more, but I was happy to get there and see the showing of people. And also I was able to speak with one of the coaches on an opposing team that I'm familiar with, and he had amazing things to say about the coaches on our football team. He said that you can tell that they're making a big difference in the lives of players, and he said it twice. So that was great to hear.
Thank you
So,
very much.
thanks.
Jen?
I went to the Chase kindergarten orientation where the highlight was riding the sports. That's it.
I went to the 7-on-7 football, at the beginning, but we stayed probably halfway through. Nice to see a lot of people there. I also attended the August graduation. Forget to mention, but Larissa and Mr. Gordon and Mr. Crumley there, which was, I thought went so well and very, very nice.
I also attended the summer graduation. Thank you very much to the high school teachers, staff, and everybody who made that happen and helped the students, you know, achieve that milestone of their lives, and hopefully they'll move forward prosperously and successfully. 7-on-7 I also went to, that was very nice. I believe we went 4 for 4 that day, which also is very good. And hopefully the boys can continue that through the remainder of the fall season. I had one owners meeting, I think, since the last meeting. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. I've been actively participating in volleyball drop-off, which is lovely just to see that varsity sports, JV sports, the high school sports are starting to activate again. And thank you very much to the coaches and staff who make all of that happen for our students. And I believe that's pretty much about it. Link is not with us today. She's overseas, so we're all secretly hating her just a little bit, but she should be back next meeting. I believe that would conclude the board round. So, Mr. Grove.
I just totally forgot. Sunday, shooting trap, and our two people, Miss Miller and Mr. Bellman, both shot 25. They shot clean when they were representing our club. So that was our high school kids shining again, stuff that they had learned from this year and this trap team. Kudos, Mr. Bellman.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the director reports. Any questions or comments regarding those? All right. Policy committee memo, our next meeting, the first meeting in September, we will be having a policy committee. So anybody on policy committee, make sure leave some extra time at the beginning of the meeting. That would start at 5:30. So if you could be here at 5:15, make sure everybody's here and we can wrap that up in a timely manner. Correspondence outcomes, none at this time. Capital project update, Dr. Evans.
Thank you, President Crumley. So on Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday morning, excuse me, I did a walkthrough of the 100-200 wing. And I took some snapshots of progress in that wing, and I've shared that with the board in a report. And the point in me, kind of gathering these is to highlight kind of the various phases of completion that the project is in. I did not take a picture of the tennis courts that are going in because I think anyone can see those as they drive in, and progress is moving along very well there. I believe those courts are to be finished later in the fall. I may get this wrong, the boys tennis season, I think it's the fall season. So they've developed, obviously, playing tennis at other locations as we had historically. But once those tennis courts are done, we'll be able to practice and hold our own contests here. In terms of the other spaces of the building, what is not seen easily from the outside, I've captured here in these photos. So most of the rooms will be available for our, they're available to our staff now. So we have our custodial crews in there. We have administration walking through and doing punch lists with our facilities director and our architect. And come September 1st, when teachers and teaching assistants and aides return, they will be in most of these spaces. The board may recall I gave you like a floor plan with like yellow and green shaded areas. In my report, there are a couple rooms that are going to be open that we thought were not going to be open. So these are most of the 200 rooms in this wing that's up here against this end of the wing. So most of those are going to be open on September 1st. Previously, we thought those weren't going to be open. All of the windows are in. You may recall previously, we were talking about plywood and putting in a temporary emergency egress, emergency exit. That's no longer the case. All of those windows are in. Most of the floors are done. There are a couple rooms on the first floor that aren't going to be ready on September 1st. One is the dance studio. However, we are relocating dance to the auditorium, so we have a workaround for that. And I think there's another classroom or two that may be offline when we start the year. However, the bulk of the rooms, which are the 100s, meaning the new science labs, and the 200s, which are more generic classrooms, including family and consumer science, will be open and ready for staff and students. They're almost complete now, but by the time the staff gets here, they will be ready. And also our cafeteria. That too will be open fully on September 1st. So if you want, in the pictures, if you want to see what a completed room looks like, that is, it's on page 3, is the Monticello High School room 212. You can get a good, I don't have it was this device. I'm not into real estate. I don't have the wide angle lens that professional photographers do for real estate, but that's the best I could do. You can see, kind of you get a really good feel for this room. What you don't kind of get a sense of is the feel of it. So I did this on Tuesday. It was quite warm and muggy. You wouldn't have known that in the room because of the air conditioning. So we have made significant upgrades to the learning environment in this wing, and I want to thank the Board of Education and the community for their support of this project and their patience. There's been a number of discoveries, in some cases setbacks, that have delayed this. However, the finished product and the redesign of the exterior has brought years of life on this wing, and also has produced energy efficiencies that were not in the previous plan. So we do have that to be. And last but not least, relative to capital project update, the solar panels for Chase Elementary School are arriving and they are being installed. So you may see those on the playground at Chase. They're on skids. That's what those are. And one last thing, the board will be acting upon 3 change orders tonight relative to the 100, 200. Mr.
So when you come up the Ricky Avenue, you'll see the fence is very close to the driveway there. What are we doing about our kids walking from the middle school home or going down the way to go in which way? Because they normally walk down the sidewalk that used to be there during school.
Yes.
And how do we plan to fit 2 buses, however we do that?
So the 2 buses will be tight, but they will fit in. In terms of walkers, I believe that was happening towards the end of last school year, and we redirected them through the school so that they could come out down here by the high school walker exit at the gym.
Okay,
So they get.
and the sidewalk is still intact as you're leaving the high school to go onto Wood Avenue?
No, not that way, but they can walk that further down off the road.
Okay,
But we'll make something clear.
just for safety
Yeah.
purposes, I want to make sure the walker.
No, we do too. And that is, just so everyone's aware, that road is actually getting shifted over. So the roadway, that's the parking lot, that goes into our parking lot, because of the footprint of the tennis court, they're going to be gradually kind of shifting that road over.
That's the extra excavation on the ball field side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That road is actually gonna shift over that way to accommodate the tennis courts on the other side.
So they're doing that plus the additional draining that should help the field.
And
Just that's
the
why.
top side is pretty much just to widen,
Yeah.
and then the field right now is broken up a little bit due to our internal project of rebuilding the 2 dugouts on the the Little League field to match the 4 dugouts that were built last year.
But the drainage at the softball and baseball field is still going to be an issue. That was not part of this project, but hopefully.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Yes,
I have a question. Since we have, I believe there's 2 graduating classes who have not seen the school finish, is there a way that once it's done, I'm sure by Christmas break it will be done?
Yes.
We could have some sort of like alumni night where the student can come back and tour the school?
Yeah, we could. I have been thinking about a more general public open house. I mean, we're going to do our open house anyway for parents, but doing something for the community that's more of a generalized open house and also possibly include or maybe on a separate night, they do transportation stuff. But yes, I'm planning something.
Thank you.
thank you very much. That brings us to upcoming events. For right now, let me do an event that's actually happening now. This is our first meeting, I believe, that we are completely live streaming. We're on our school YouTube channel. And for anybody that is watching or might be watching, Board Docs is the website that we use to run our meetings. It has our agenda. It also has any public documents that are available to the public. So when Dr. Evans was just speaking of the capital project update, if you went down to N5, it has public content. You can click on that and see the pictures that Dr. Evans was actually referring to. So anybody that's watching now on the YouTube channel, let your friends know. And Board Docs is the website that we use to navigate through the meetings. So you can follow through that at home as well. So you can see some of the content that we have available for public content on the meetings. Besides that, for upcoming events, I just pushed out to the people going to the New York State conference for NISBA. They had the board retreat questionnaire. I pushed that out through email. So if everybody could kind of take a look at that, fill that out, it'll help the moderator during the retreat process kind of feel us out and help us with what we're looking for help with. For the most part, everything else is board meetings. We do have a policy meeting next time, which I already commented on, and the meeting after that, we have audit. I believe that's just me and Helen. I don't understand why it's just us. It's a fun time. And then obviously NISBA's coming up on October 27th and 20th. Community events. None at this time. We're actually a few. 7th annual Monticello Tees and Threes golf outing, September 24th at Swan Lake. The proceeds will benefit the Monticello Boys Basketball Booster Club. To register or sponsor, contact Chris Russo, last year's New York State Coach of the Year. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Russo. Any questions or comments from the public?
I don't have anybody signed up.
Thank you very much, Janet. Appreciate it. That brings us right back to Dr. Evans for superintendent update.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We have a bevy of new staff who are joining our family tonight, and I want to recognize them and congratulate them. And then right after we announce everyone and you stand up and just kind of wave, if you will. Ms. Bonfante is here and she'll be taking your photos out in the hallway right after. So I know she's not here tonight, but we have appointed a new principal for the St. John Street Community School, and that is Jennifer Gore. Ms. Gore has been with the district as a supervisor of special education since I believe 2016. She began work as a principal a couple weeks ago, right after I offered her, and she accepted the position. So she's been working very hard over the past 2 weeks to make sure that school is up and running, including interviewing many of the candidates, no longer candidates, teachers and other staff who are here tonight. So congratulations, Ms. Gore. So if you're here, if you could just please stand. As a new teacher at the St. John Street in the pre-K program, Jessica DePrenza, welcome. Another teacher in the St. John Street pre-K program, not a new teacher by any stretch, Christine Olson-Gray. Also joining us as an experienced teacher from, I believe, Project Excel in the pre-K program, Melissa Alder. A special education teacher in the new pre-K program, Heather Dalloway. Joining us as a family and consumer science teacher at the middle school, Jennifer Robinhood. Jenna's here. Also joining us as a Spanish teacher at the Robert J. Kaiser Middle School, Jeanette Sands. Hello.
She should get a clap for English.
Joining us as an aide at Cook Elementary School, Trish Amandrina. Joining us as an elementary teacher at Rutherford Elementary School, Julia Langra. Also a new pre-K teacher at St. John Street, Amy Schoonmaker. Another new pre-K teacher at St. John Street, Nicole Fallon. A new special education teacher at St. John Street, Jessica Clark. A new special education teacher at St. John Street Preschool, Nicole Barron. A pre-K teacher at St. John Street, Gabriela Soto. And a new special education teacher at Rutherford Elementary School, not new to the district, but now officially a teacher with us, Caitlin Key. A new music teacher at Chase Elementary School, Benjamin Corbett. And a new social studies teacher at our alternative school program at St. John Street, Elijah Zane. Did I leave it around? Is everyone?
I'm Tiffany Gibbs. I'm going to be a teacher assistant at Cook.
Welcome, Ms. Gibbs.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome aboard, everyone. If you could please, Ms. Danfante would gladly take your picture outside for our website. So welcome aboard and congratulations. So in other staffing news, unfortunately, we, like many school districts around the nation, are struggling with filling vacant teachers. And as we sit tonight, there are approximately 10 full-time teaching positions that are still vacant that we have been actively recruiting for, some of them well back into the spring. A couple of them I'm confident that we will be able to fill next week. However, I would say probably 7 or 8 of them, there is a strong likelihood that we would have to fill with substitutes in the interim. We are, consistently looking at our advertising strategies and where do we advertise and how we advertise. I've even resorted to pursuing candidates more aggressively in OLAS, which is the online application system that Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES does, and that's kind of the common place where teacher candidates look. And we're also already have reached out to a program in one of the SUNYs up in the North Country on securing a teacher for the following year in a very hard to fill area, which would be a replacement for Ms. Berenberg when she retires at the end of next year. It's very difficult right now, but we're doing everything we believe we can to try to attract and retain talent. We also are actively searching for some administrative vacancies. I mentioned Ms. Gore before. We're changing her position to Assistant Director of Pupil Personnel Services. Tonight, we regrettably accepted the resignations of Kurt Budenhagen, Director of Physical Education, Health and Athletics, and Tiffany Hall, our Director of Student Equity. We wish them well as they're pursuing work in another district. We also anticipate a vacancy in the Director of Pupil Personnel Services. So we've advertised for all those positions. We plan on beginning screening interviews for those applicants the week of September 5th, the first week back. Dr. Oler Marks and I will be doing screening interviews of qualified applicants. We'll be giving short lists to focus groups consisting of stakeholders, administrators, teachers, parents, paraprofessionals, who will then give kind of a rank order list, if you will, back to district administration for consideration of final appointment. Right now, the timeline has us filling those positions or hopefully making appointments for those positions at the October 6th Board of Education meeting. And then they would hopefully start on or around November 6th. We do plan on filling a couple of them with interims. I should have more information on that within the next week or so about who and for what positions. And then lastly, at least for my report tonight, the New York State Education Department and the Department of Health issued a joint letter on COVID-19 mitigation and response strategies. They basically aligned their recommendations with what the U.S. Centers for Disease Control put out earlier in the month. The Reader's Digest version of that is of all of the COVID-19 recommendations, requirements, things that school districts, schools, staff members, students had to do over the past 2 years. The only one that really remains is that if an individual tests positive for COVID, they need to be isolated for 5 days, meaning they cannot come to school for the first 5 days. And then if symptoms subside or no longer persist, they are able to return on day 6. However, they do need to wear a face covering from days 6 through 10 upon their return. But that is it. There's no more social distancing requirements. There's no more quarantining of close contacts. There's no more testing requirements, proof of vaccination, proof of negative test to return, no test to stay options. All of those things have been lifted. Some of them are recommended as good practice, but they are no longer asked of school districts or required to do. And then the last thing that I have is tonight, I'm sharing with the board my proposed goals for the upcoming school year. I based those goals on the 3-year strategic plan that the board adopted back in July. Many of the goals and the activities are directly lifted from them. So I really wanted to make sure that what I was doing in my work aligned with where this district wanted to go. I can be happy to take questions on any of that now. If you want to save the questions on the goals till we get to the action items, that's fine too, whatever the board's pleasure is.
Do we have any questions on Dr. Seven's goals?
I had a question about, under fiscal responsibility number 1, the potential BOCES closure resulting in additional state aid. Is that, you probably know, are there more out there than that what we subscribe to? You know, like how many is it? Is this a big thing to try to track down? Or is it?
No, it's really a matter of pursuing COSERs from BOCES for programs that we're not currently in COSERs for, because we recoup aid on those COSERs to a certain degree, not 100%, but some. So it's a matter of whenever we are creating program, recreating program, or just looking at the budget in general, thinking about, is there a co-service out there or a cross contract out there with other BOCES that can provide that service, and we would recoup aid out.
Right, and so I know we have some COSERs, a lot with but with other COSERs as well. I mean, can you COSER with any BOCES?
And Ms. Baylor can correct me if I'm wrong, you can, so long as your local BOCES doesn't have a similar program.
Yeah,
So you have to kind of start with that.
Right.
Should they not offer,
Right.
then you can go out. which
So
is
there
known as
could be a lot of
cross
stuff
contract.
out there we don't know about.
Yes, yeah, but
Yeah.
there could be, but
I
very
mean,
often
probably
we
we cover most of it, but maybe there's some.
yeah, and the gist of it is, if you're doing something similar with a similar vendor that another district is doing, then chances are there's a cross contract or a COSER out there.
Ashley?
Thank you. My main question is about the panorama piece. So that's on school culture number 5.
Mhm.
So my question is, so it says use data gathered from panorama surveys to identify and target students' social emotional needs. it's not that statement, it's the use of Panorama that I have questions on. So my questions are in terms of Panorama itself. So it's not really that goal, you know what I mean? So my questions are, last year there was an opt-out option. So my question is that the same as for this year? Are parents, guardians able to opt their child out of?
We are considering that, yes.
Yeah.
So it's a consideration, it's not a,
Yeah, I mean, we have not yet brought this to the buildings in terms of, because they tailor the panoramic surveys based on, you know, like the needs of the Cook students, obviously, are going to be very different than the needs of the high school students in terms of how we think about questions and, you know, what rises to the surface in terms of what kinds of things would be valuable for us to measure student growth in. You know, it is definitely something that we wanted to do last year, and we are just like anything else, anytime we do something, we just revisit that decision. And but that's not a decision that I would make by myself, that we would involve the building leaders in that discussion.
okay, so I get that there's a maybe, but not a short opt-out. So then, another question then would be, when I read, there are parental rights on being able to opt out of student programs. So that's a question for another time, it would be offline today. So my question would be, what social emotional learning programs would that include, if any?
In terms of curricular programs?
Just the social emotional learning.
Or in terms of replacements for Panorama?
Well, I'm not talking about replacements for Panorama. Those are two things. So I'm just saying, in general, if it's a question as to if opt-out is even an option, my question would be, well, are there components of social emotional learning that a parent is entitled to opt their child out of? My understanding is you're not getting graded on it. It's not like it's the core subjects, math and science.
Sure.
So.
But I mean, generally speaking, there isn't, because there are curricular requirements that we have to abide by as a school district, and that we, as a school district, believe are important for our students to learn. So I can give you an example, like we're required to teach mental health. That's a requirement that's really set clearly in state education department regs. So there's no opt-out for that. There are New York State standards that we are required, the students are required to learn by the state education department. So we teach curriculum, we teach students to meet those standards. So the Panorama survey is more of an assessment tool. So that's why I'm kind of parsing out, what is curriculum? In other words, what is taught?
Sure.
And what an assessment tool might be. So generally speaking, no, there's not opt-outs around curriculum.
And that would be the EduPlanet 21.
EduPlanet is not a curriculum. EduPlanet 21 is a program that we load our current curriculum in. So right now, our curriculum was in place that we call the P drive. And so there's many iterations of it. And so what we're doing is we're moving it into a digital platform that's called EduPlanet 21. And so it's a platform that houses our articulated curriculum.
So it's like a curriculum map.
It's like plan book.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so it's like plan book, but when I look at EduPlanet 21, the bells and whistles are, it has connections with social emotional learning.
So the connections that we have opted into have to do with the UDL, right? So like understanding universal design for learning. That's the component that we kind of buy into. Right, so looking at differentiation is a big concern for us as we migrate our curriculum from P drive to EduPlanet. That's the only piece that we
subscribe to. Okay, so then the point was not to find lessons through EduPlanet 21.
That is correct. We don't use it any
social emotional learning.
They use it now.
look for standard for your math standards or your science standards, and then find that standard and click on it and then drag it in and have it be a lesson.
Yeah, and there's no lesson that comes from them at all. We can move the standards, we have a template that is loaded in there. And like I said, the only piece that we add is that UDL piece, because there are some training modules in there that help, and then the templates force some level of differentiation within the mapping. That's all we do, by none of the curricular programming.
Gotcha. Okay, that was great. Thank you. Okay, so then as far as opting out, it used to be an option from last year. Not sure if it's gonna be an option this coming year. If it is an option this year, will there be a digital or paper form as before? Because before it was advertised on the website. And I know it's like hypothetical, you can't say whether you're gonna opt out or not, but before it was a link that was on the website, and that's how you found it, the opt out, right? So my
Yes.
question is, the future, could we do, is it, are we thinking of having something like also in a letter that's sent home? It gives a little bit more information about it, and then with the opt out link or whatnot.
I don't know that like I said, we haven't had discussions with the building administrators yet, and this is not a decision that I would make by myself. So I mean, we certainly can bring all of these suggestions to the team when we meet.
When those building level decisions are made, does that come back to the board to be approved? Or is that something that's kind of done at the building level and
Yeah,
we move forward with it?
yep,
Okay.
like any other assessments that we do within the district.
But I think Ashley raised a good point in terms of notification and making sure everyone's aware that this is going on. So whatever the decision, whatever way it goes, parents will be fully informed, either at a minimum through our parent square, if not hard copies and back, a letter that we back home.
I will just say, to add on to the parents where I went in there and to activate what you guys doing. I found it very helpful because it does have on the side forms, messages, everything that could be in there that you want. So that would be a perfect place as we're discussing this to put that, so they're on file.
So I do have another question about these panoramic surveys. Are we definitely on board with panoramic for the school year? Or is that still something that's budgeted? Because that goes with the goals, just to talk about goals in general.
Sure.
If it's use data gathered from surveys, not necessarily panorama, just surveys to identify and target student social emotional needs, then it doesn't pin it to panorama. That's an open question as to, that's definitely what we're going to do.
So if we contract with Panorama, yes.
Okay. And then panorama, my understanding is it connects with your individual child. So my identity is known. So if I have a digital survey, the program knows it's me who's logging on and putting my information in. It's not anonymous like Survey Monkey.
Okay.
Correct.
I don't know, but let's say that it is.
Well, that's what we're told. So
Okay.
in previous, so then my thought would be, on top of that, would it be worthwhile to have these perhaps on paper so that there's more a likelihood of keeping the child's privacy. So for example, if you've got like 10 questions on paper, what would be the cost of that? Maybe it's, I don't know what the cost of time, teachers and all that, but if you had something more, private, then a child's information wouldn't be in the digital. And I know that they have privacy protections as a company, the big tech firm like Google and other ones do. But my thought is, because this is sensitive information about people's personal feelings at different age groups, my question would be, was there any options to have it on paper?
So there's a lot of sensitive data now that we have in various data servers everywhere, right? And those are all protected. under privacy requirements that those vendors have to abide by according to New York State Education Law 2D. So you can think about, the amount of data that's just in school tool alone. And the amount of student records that are in there, that's very sensitive as well. That is all electronic. And the reason for that, and the reason why surveys like Panorama or NWA assessments is because we are able to get that data quickly and efficiently and get it into the hands of teachers who can make sense of that data and act upon it quickly. If we were to go to some type of paper format, I can't give you an estimate now of what that would cost or look like, let alone the human resource that would be required to carry it out. And we think that our teachers and staff, because technology like that's available, like NWEA, is more efficient to have that in a software platform than on paper.
Understood. So then the other question would be, and I don't think this is possible, to get those questions ahead of time to parents. I believe we talked about that before, that wasn't a possibility to, with this, I have a survey that my second grader is going to be taking
Sure.
on his personal feelings and his social, emotional well-being. And maybe I want to know his answers and responses. It's not like the other curriculum where you have a math quiz and you get it back and you put it on your refrigerator at home. I mean, there's more of the understanding of what's going on in classes with the other areas, and this one's not being graded, and this one's being held as this is sensitive information. However, I'm just seeing that there's a disconnect with parents and guardians with what they understand of that class, whereas they don't have that wall so much with the other courses.
So I think, in the general sense, we can certainly make available to parents what are some of the topics and categories that are going to be in the survey. And we may be able to give sample questions, like, for example, here's a question that they ask about feelings, and here's what it might look like at the first grade level, or the fifth grade level, 10th grade, for example. But where it becomes problematic is obviously there's like domain issues and copyright issues that Panorama in this case has, and similarly NWA would have. And also, we want students to be kind of genuine and in their responses. So we want them to, tell us on that day, how are they feeling about school? How are they feeling about fitting in with their friends? And we want that to be authentic. We want students to be authentic. I think that's the best answer to that question. There's a second part to your question, though, Ms. Riley. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't just that; it was
About the disconnect with families.
the disconnect. So I do think that we need to do a better job in terms of informing the community about what and when and why this is important. I don't know about data generated from the surveys, whether that's in any type of parent report or.
Well, I mean, I guess here, I'm just gonna give you a really specific example. I'm looking at the results from the 6th through 12th grade panorama. So we had questions around self-management, right? So questions such as, during the past 30 days, how often did you come to class prepared? Right, so that's a useful piece of information for us to have in terms of looking at the whole of our 6th through 12th grade students, right? So I'm looking at only composite, like all the data together. I'm not looking at individual student data. And, I have two children of my own who once were teenagers, and anyone who has raised teenagers know, right, that is not necessarily something that I would have gotten a honest answer on if my children knew that I was going to see the response of that survey, right? And so there's some challenges in schools supporting students in some of these kind of self-management areas where not every child is going to give us an authentic, as Dr. Evans said, an authentic response to that that can help us to help them more productively.
I have one last question, which I think you'll have to any other time, I don't know if we'll have it for now. But because we're using this at a great amount, seemingly great amount of time, not just this, but other avenues of social emotional learning and planning, which a lot of it sounds very much worthwhile. I can say, preface by saying that. But I'd like to know if there's any independent studies, like multi-year studies that are available that some of these programs gave to you or to the school to say, listen, this is how a school district with your comparable overall population size, its overall rural location, percent of population having free reduced price meals, percentages of various ethnicity, all this, like a comparable school, right? How they did after academically, how they improved their academics with this kind of these programs that they're offering. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, I think, so typically we refer to those as white papers, right? If a, textbook company is trying to sell their, a reading program, here's the research that we have to support it, right? I think that's what you're asking for things like Panorama or.
Independent though, there's no independent,
Well, there may be, I don't know, there may be, I mean, I'm just starting,
right?
typically there are white papers. I don't know, a lot of this is relatively new.
Okay.
So, while I'm sure there's all sorts of research on different counseling methodologies and, the role of the teacher and how to run some social emotional learning programs, I don't know about others so much. So we'll look into that and we'll bring something back to the board. I think particularly around, you're asking around Panorama in particular. So we will bring that back to the board.
Thank you.
I have a
Sorry.
question. So, at the last meeting, you realize that this survey, children be tracked, like, Joey takes it, you're gonna see Joey's response in the spring, you see Joey's response in the fall, so it follows the child. What about the parents? Because in our strategic plan, when it said something in here about the community taking a survey of Panorama, does that mean that if I take this, no?
Go ahead, I'm sorry,
Okay.
yeah, it's just fine with document.
Oh, yeah, it's on page. Sorry. It's on the school culture. Will be surveyed. So since we've Panorama, which means we'll be surveyed in Panorama, that means if I take this survey, my responses are going to be tracked this year, next year, however long with Panorama, whatever I say as a community member is going to be tracked.
No, we're not surveying community members on Panorama. We're surveying community members.
Okay,
That is not Panorama.
so that's gonna be anonymous,
Sorry.
or is that going to be an anonymous survey, or is that going to be something that's going to be tracked as well?
That would probably be anonymous, because we're looking more for the community's perceptions of what they think the learning environment is like. I think that's the survey or the community engagement one, where it's asking parents about the learning opportunities the district provides to them as adults. There's a few different places where different stakeholders would be surveyed. Most of those would be anonymous. Panorama's not, but the ones around, I think it's like, believe that their school exhibits a safe, secure, and orderly environment. So 80% or more of other stakeholder groups. Those would be anonymous surveys.
Okay,
Okay.
so my next question is,
I'm sorry. So my reference to Panorama surveys is particular from the actions and tasks. So use data gathered from Panorama surveys to identify and target student social emotional needs. So it's not taking data from that report to measure the goal. It's using that survey as a strategy for teachers to work with kids to make them feel better about school.
okay, so we're not using Panorama to survey families, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I'm a little confused. Ellenville uses Panorama. They put their survey, I think this is Boston, they put it out there, and there's 219 students from third grade was, took the survey, this is the response. And on here, it also says family school relationship survey. So we didn't do that? Did we do that? I don't remember. Because Ellenville did it. I'm just curious if we did that as part of this Panorama. I could not remember if it led.
No, we would have a different.
Okay, are we going to publish the results as like Ellen built it, for example, like I just said, are we going to publish that on the website? So
Yeah,
that we can
I-
see like what our students are, right?
yes, I mean, look, I think this kind of goes back to what I was discussing before in response to Ms. Riley's question. I think we need to do a better job of talking, interacting with the community about what is being asked, what the survey might look like and how we're using that to help kids. But yes, we will publish the data.
And I think it's also for parents to realize that their child is being tracked. It's not anonymous, your child is being tracked. I think it's important for parents to understand that.
Sure, but they're not being tracked by Panorama. The survey's Panorama, the data is housed there.
Right,
But there's nobody from Panorama Inc. that's,
I understand, but I think it's important for parents to understand that once they take the survey, they take it again, that their results are gonna be there.
yeah,
Which
much
parents might want.
like NWA, right?
Right.
Is there any other questions about Dr. Evans' goals?
Well, I'm sorry, I do like hear what you said about quarterly informational events and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. On the community engagement section, I think that's really awesome.
Yes, for
All of it.
yeah, getting out into different, kind of areas, taking like the coffee, another cup of coffee conversations, and trying to go in other places for it.
I think a lot of
They
this
came
is
up
great.
with that. I'm sorry, that was in the strategic plan, so I just looked.
I just want to say, I took a lot of people's time when going over my questions. I just wanted to say, I didn't mean to sound so critical. I think a lot of it is great.
Yeah,
So when I was looking through it, I just thought there's a lot of great goals and
and these are important for us to hear too, important for me as superintendent relative to my goals, but certainly around, in this case Panorama, but other things about what the community is asking for and what we can do a better job of informing.
So if there's no further questions about Dr. Evans' goals, that would bring us to Lisa, Superintendent for Business Update.
Thank you. This evening, I'm asking the board to access some cafeteria tables and chairs from the RJK Middle School cafeteria. You have the claims auditor report for June of 22, student activity quarterly report, your budget status and revenue status for June 22, and the school lunch profit and loss for June of 22. Also asking the board to approve the Healthy Kids Meal Service Contract. Healthy Kids is our community-based partner for pre-K, and the district will be providing meals to them, and it's a contract through CACFP, which is Children and Adult Feeding Program, that we get to bill them back and get reimbursed and all that good stuff. So we want to make sure they have good healthy meals. Also, I'm asking the board to award one transportation bid to Rolling B for the Center for Discovery. They've been doing that for our district for several years, and we're going to continue that. You usually can extend a contract on an annual basis at CPI was 6.3%. This past year, but you can only do that for 5 years. Last year was our 5th year, so we had to bid. The difference between the CPI increase and what he bid was about $30 a day, $34 a day. So it wasn't terribly high, but they do a great job. Our kids are familiar with them and the drivers, so we want to continue that. I'm also asking the board to reject the bid that we did for private school transportation earlier in the spring. We had some concerns about some litigation that was out there where we may have to provide transportation on days that our district was not in session. And with our driver contract, that could have caused a lot of issues asking drivers to be working on days when we're not in session. So we thought we'd try to bid it and see what happened and what came back. We had 2 bidders. One, the low bidder sent a packet that was not complete, so there was no way we could award it. And the other bidder was extremely high and would have blown our budget out of the water. So I'm asking the board to reject that bid for private school transportation.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So the one that we are awarding, is that? How much would it, does that save, why do you contract instead of using our, our staff, is it cheaper to contract?
I'm gonna say it's not necessarily cheaper to contract, but with the driver shortage,
Yeah.
it frees up a person, and we've had a lot of trouble covering all of our routes, even with our substitutes. So to take this one back
Right,
might be more difficult now than it would have been maybe 7 years ago.
right, okay.
Yeah.
So the 691 is per route, so it doesn't matter how many students are on the route.
Correct.
It's just a flat.
Correct, and that includes a monitor. So
Oh,
it's a driver and a monitor for the 691. We also asked them to quote in the bid for an LPN, because these are some of our high need students, so there may be a need for a LPN. None of the students currently on the route need that, so it's not in this award.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yep.
And Lisa, just, we don't actually have to take any action on denying the other two bids. Correct.
So the resolution is to award the rolling B and reject the other one,
Okay.
so it's all in one resolution.
Very well, thank you.
I do have a question. In the students, the middle school treasury quarterly report, there's a large balance for 8th grade. Does that money follow the 8th grade class and 9th grade?
June 30. I am pretty sure that it does not. I'm gonna have to check with that, but I think that it stays in the 8th grade. I don't think it follows the 8th graders here. I don't know why. I think that's the way it's always been, but let me double check.
Yeah, because the 8th grade class grade.
They raised money for the 8th grade trip. I'm not sure if all of those disbursements include the 8th grade trip or not. I mean, they started off with a pretty high balance, which is why I'm thinking maybe it stays with the 8th grade, but I really don't do the school activities. That's my treasurer, so I will double check with her.
Okay, and then also the class of the class of 2024. So that's gonna follow them until they graduate. That's how it works in high school.
In the high school, it follows
Okay,
them,
all right.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next, smart bond allowance. With us doing pre-K at St. John Street, there's some door access control work that needs to be done that matches our system because it was Project Excel system. We are currently doing the smart bond for other work in St. John, so this falls within what we're currently doing. We're just moving money from a construction contingency that we don't feel we have to use because we're pretty much done doing all the work with the smart bond project. From the contingency into time and materials to allow us to do that. So it's not exceeding what we've already approved. And we don't have to do another amendment or anything like that. I'm just asking the board to move it from contingency to allow us to spend it on this purpose. And finally, the tax form. And that's a favorite thing everybody loves to talk about. I just want to talk about it for a few minutes. As you all know, the tax levy for this upcoming school year was a $0 increase. So any change in individual's tax bill for this upcoming school year is a result of factors totally outside the control of the district. So it's either going to be a property assessment change or an equalization rate change. In addition, STAR, if it's on your tax bill, continues to decrease. So even though we went out with the levy with no increase, people could see a change in their tax bill. Just to summarize, taxable assessed values increased in all towns except Mammoth. Fallsburg had the largest increase, which was over $3 million. And we called the assessor's office and said, hey, is this for real? Because it just seemed like a very high increase. And it's absolutely real. They said they had a lot of construction over there and it's going to go up again next year. So I was shocked.
Is that where the Raleigh was?
I think so. Equalization rates. Equalization rates decreased in every town. Some towns were double-digit decreases. The smallest was 8 percentage points.
Mammocating had the largest decrease. They went from a 59% equalization rate in 21-22 to 45.5 in 22-23. That impacts how we apportion the levy. So when you take your assessed value and you multiply it by the equalization rate, it supposedly equalizes all the assessed values in the multiple towns. So everybody's assessed value is somewhat the same for a similar product, in theory.
The state does that?
The state sets the equalization rate, yeah. So our equalized assessed values increased in every single town. So you, in a way, you would think that's a good thing, but the amounts that they changed impacts how we apportion the levy. So the apportioned tax levy decreased in Bethel, Forestburg, and Thompson. So those three towns saw a smaller percentage of the levy being raised by the properties in that town. It increased in Fallsburg and in Mammocating. Mammocating and Fallsburg shifted a portion of the levy to those two townships. So once you take your taxable assessed value, you multiply by the tax rate, subtract your star, then you get what's on your tax bill. Tax rates have correspond with the changes in the equalization rates and the assessed values. So all the tax rates went down in every town except Mammocating. I'm sorry. It's outside my control. And yeah. So anyway, Mammocating's tax rate increased by $2 a thousand. Everybody else saw a decrease or a slight increase pennies. So Bethel, Fallsburg, and Thompson residents with no changes in their assessed values should see a decrease in their tax bill. Should. If they had assessed value changes or if they have star, they may see a slight increase. It might be the same. Mammocating will most likely see an increase in their tax bill regardless of assessed value changes or star. So right now, if your house is assessed at $100,000, I just use that because it's a round number. In Bethel, your tax bill theoretically will go down by about $78. Fallsburg, it'll go down by $17, Forestburg by $168, and Thompson by about $50. Mammocating's will go up over $200. So, and that's just how the process works. And all of our good intentions of keeping the levy at zero, the state comes in and messes it up. And so I apologize if you live in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Any questions about property taxes? No. Linda, Superintendent for Curriculum.
So I just have a couple items. The first is a memo to decommission excess books in the library. I think Mrs. Knowlton talked about that during her presentation, how Rachel Patron had gone to the library, and you can see there's different categories on the memo, and then a list of the titles. The second thing I'm asking the board to act on is the Healthy Kids contract. So as Mrs. Vela mentioned, this is our community-based organization partner for preschool. They will have 24-year-olds and 14 3-year-olds. And so this is the contract for that, so they can be paid for that. The third item here is the innovation waiver. I mentioned this in my memo. So in working with the state on getting approval for our preschool special education program, we are under an expedited review right now, so we're hopeful that we'll have it shortly, but we'll see. There's a lot of questions that keep coming back and forth, but one of the things that they suggest that we do try to keep things financially sustainable for us is to do an innovation waiver where we would only have, typically in an inclusion classroom with special education students in it, gen ed students, you would have 2 teachers, a special education teacher and a gen ed teacher. The innovation waiver is asking that we would only have 1 teacher in those rooms that would be dual certified with special education. And that is just in our 3 inclusion special education rooms. And you can see that we consulted with many folks, including the MTA and the MASA president who signed off on that. And again, that was also under the advisement of the state to do that. And then the last 2 items I have, as many of you know, the Empire grant funded many of our after-school programs for quite a number of years. They changed the funding reimbursement process, and then they extended the Empire funding for just 1 more year for next year. So we had to renegotiate our contracts with Boys and Girls Club and Cornell Cooperative, who do some enrichment add-ins into the program. And we're looking for Healthy Kids to take over the programs at the 3 elementary schools, and we should have a contract for that at the next board meeting.
They're taking that over next year.
No, this coming school year.
Any other questions for Linda? Okay, moving on. Adriana,
I'd like to motion for T1 through T19 to be considered as a group.
do I have a second on that?
Yes.
By Mr. Cronin. Any discussion? All in favor?
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time? Sorry,
The motion is T1 through T19.
T1. The superintendent. Can we take out the superintendent policy? T15. Can we talk about it?
That's what we're doing right now. So you would like to remove T15 from that slate?
Yes.
Adriana, would you amend your motion?
I'd like to provide a friendly amendment to review for consideration date T1 through T14 and then T16 through T19.
Do I have a second on the amended motion made by Victoria? Any discussion? All in favor? So ordered. Adriana,
I'd like the motion that we approve T1 through T14 and T16 through T19.
do I have a second? By Wendy.
Thought I just approved that. I'm sorry. That, I'm sorry. I wasn't approving.
Any discussion? We amended the motion to remove T15 out.
Right.
She makes a motion to take all of those items as a group. We say it's cool to take them as a group, then we approve them as a group.
That's 2 different things. Thank you.
So the action items with all the contracts and things of that nature that are a little more, important, let's say, we need to actually approve to take them as a group in the first place.
Okay.
Once we all are cool with the group, then we actually approve them as a group, and then we'll take T15 as a separate item, and T20 today is a roll call vote, so we have to take that one separate anyways.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, all in favor? So ordered. Adriana,
I'd like to motion that we bring up for consideration T15.
do I have a second? By Ellen Jersey. Any discussion?
Okay. My discussion is, we talked about it at length, but if it were not to say the panorama, because I don't know, use data gathered from surveys to identify the targets, student social and emotional needs. That's better with me than saying panorama when I'm not sure if it's an opt-out option. So that's where I'm at with it.
All in favor? What did I do second?
Oh, well, I didn't, so is that all the discussion? Then I would make a motion to approve it. I just made a motion to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
So I just
Very, very well. So we're still in discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just, that's why I was waiting.
All right,
I'm on it.
I messed up.
Yeah, no.
Any other discussion?
So I guess my thought is, I have two thoughts. Number one, is there any other survey vehicle that might be used?
There are, but we've contracted with Panorama for this year, and I'm having a hard time understanding what the issue is with Panorama. You heard the example of the question. One of the questions that was asked, it is a survey that is widely used and widely accepted. We determined to go ahead with Panorama. We are taking, as I mentioned before, taking into consideration an opt-out clause. But I don't know that, other surveys aren't going to ask similar questions.
Right.
We're after, how do students feel about their place in school and society at large? So we need, it's important that our staff understand that to better educate the students who they have in their classes.
I think personally that I think in general for children, I think should be anonymous. I don't think we should track a child. It's gonna follow him 7 through 12, and I know you say it's not gonna go anywhere, which it might not. But the fact that this child is being tracked, I have a major issue with children being tracked that way. I mean, you're telling me that parents are not gonna be tracked if we don't do Panorama, then why are the children being tracked?
But at the present moment, that's the service that we've already contracted with, that we're using for at least this year. So Dr. Evans' goals is to use the service that we've already contracted with and use that information to help our students successfully navigate this school year at minimum. So at the present moment, the fact that Dr. Evans' goals states that he's going to use the service that we've already contracted with to use that as a guide to help our students in their social emotional learning. I don't feel that that's particularly, he's using the tools that we've approved already to help accomplish a goal.
When did a Panorama get approved? What month?
I'd have to go back.
It's not, it's a very small contract. So the way that anything that's over $5,000, is that correct? So that we contract, I think we only spend about $3,800, $4,000 on this tool. We just buy the tool. We don't buy any other.
So it doesn't come here for approval, so that's something you do on your own, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it a BOCES co?
It's a BOCES co-service.
So BOCES co-services do not come before the board.
Okay. Okay, so but what you're saying is we don't know if there's gonna be an opt-out.
Correct.
At the present moment.
Yes, it'll be considered.
Just a quick look at Panorama's website. There are two types of surveys. There are confidential surveys, meaning your information is tracked. The school gets information, but there's also anonymous surveys where the student information is not assigned to a student. And so some of these like community feeling things probably are gonna be anonymous.
Yeah,
Right,
and I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, some will be confidential if it's about their specific emotional well-being or whatever, but specifically, a lot of the surveys that are talked about in your goals are gonna be kind of bigger picture, probably anonymous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at, and I think you brought this point up before, Ms. LaRusso, like comparing the strategic plan that's stating with what I have listed as activity number 5. So activity number 5 under my action plan, goals for next year, use data gathered from Panorama surveys to identify and target student social emotional needs. So those are individual students, much like NWA on reading and math, right? The other surveys that are referenced, and even the goal, at least on my plan, at least 75% of stakeholders believe that their school exhibits a safe, secure, and orderly environment and feel a sense of kindness, respect, inclusivity, and belonging as indicated by surveys. So that is, I have no intention of using Panorama for that measurement. That would be a kind of a different survey that could be anonymous because I'm looking for a number, right? I'm looking for out of the 250 teachers surveyed, X% felt this about this item. Okay, so the activity though, that's being, the panorama survey activity is being used by teachers at the ground level to help students feel adjusted, welcome, belonging, a sense of belonging among their peers in school. So there's different utilities here between, and I get what you're saying about there's many different surveys. So that I'm just trying to separate those out in their distinct uses.
Any other discussion? Adriana,
I'd like to motion that we approve T15.
do I have a second? By Alan Jersey, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Did you get that, Janet? Thank you very much. Motion carries. Adriana,
I'd like to motion that we discussion T20, the approval of the tax warrant.
a second to discuss. Made by Alan Jersey, any discussion
I just have a quick question.
about the tax warrant?
Yeah, I'm new to all this, so this. So is anything gonna go out on the school website explaining, hey, it's still at zero, we can't control what they say it did? I mean, are people gonna look at it like we lied? The board lied, because the taxes are going up?
We can,
Am I off? What, like,
no, well, a misunderstanding or about this whole process, we could probably put something out.
Sure, I mean, we, around budget time, we always have articles up about the state of the union, so to speak, for that year. So I'm sure Lisa and I can, or Ms. Vale and I can sit down and put something up about this situation now.
okay,
Why a 0% levy increase?
Increase somebody's taxes and mandating. And
right, so they don't look like,
my son's friend whose parents live out in Bethel, theirs went down, and why am I getting the,
right.
yes.
It is very helpful that we last year.
Oh.
Any other discussion? Adriana,
I'd like to motion that we approve T20, which is the approval of the tax warrant by roll call vote.
do I have a second? Made by Jen Holmes. I believe that, any discussion? I believe that takes us to Janet.
I don't have anybody on the list.
Oh, no,
No,
roll
no.
call vote.
Oh, roll call vote. Okay, and then after the meeting, if everybody can come up and sign.
Yes,
Okay, so, Timothy Crumley,
aye,
Adriana Mason Greco,
Aye.
Wendy Gallivan Weiner,
Aye.
Todd Groden,
Yes.
Jennifer Holmes.
Aye.
Ellen Jersey.
Aye.
Victoria LaRusso.
Aye.
Ashley Riley,
Aye.
and Linka is not here.
absolutely. All members have to sign that particular motion, so before you leave, just go see Janet so you can
It'll be here.
sign over where she's stationed. Thank you very much, Adriana. Correspondence. None at this time. Janet, any questions or comments from the public?
No.
Thank you very much. And a motion for adjournment made by Todd Groden, seconded by Jen Holmes. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. Just again, Janet just needs a signature for the tax warrant